Mark at GBnews.com. Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is the former head of intelligence agency MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove. Plus, in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, we've been asking, as Lucy Letby goes back to court, should convicted murderers be allowed to appeal their sentence? The results are in, and I will reveal all next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan Tonight. In the course of today, we've been conducting an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. I've been asking, as Lucy Letby goes back to court, should convicted murderers be allowed to appeal their sentence? Well, the results are in, and it's narrow. 60% say yes, whilst 40% say no, she should not appeal. Looking forward to this in just 15 minutes' time. Set your watches, don't miss a second. It's my take at 10. Super lovey Stephen Fry thinks Brexit's been a disaster. Well, I'll be dealing with him in just a short while. You won't want to miss it. But first, Mark Meets. And this evening, Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of the British Secret Intelligence Service MI6, a government agency responsible for the collection, analysis and dissemination of foreign intelligence. MI6 is also charged with the conduct of espionage activities outside of British territory. Sir Richard is currently chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of London, and he was previously Master of Pembroke College, Cambridge, from 2004 to 2015. Sir Richard, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. What is the greatest immediate threat to British national security, do you think?
I think it's probably twofold. We have a major war on the European continent, which is a destabiliser in all sorts of different ways. And I think in addition to that, we should look at organised criminality, and by that I mean everything that covers cybercrime, illegal immigration, the drugs trade. But I mean, I'm putting the emphasis on immediate. I mean, there are longer-term serious threats as well.
We know a few years ago that the NHS's entire IT system was shut down for about a day. How bad could cybercrime be? Because it feels perhaps to some of my viewers and listeners a bit abstract as a threat.
Well, pretty serious. I mean, it depends whether it's casual criminality, whether it's a sort of anarchist hacker, or whether it's a nation state really trying to undermine our critical infrastructure.
Which there's some evidence that Russia have been responsible for in the past.
I had my emails, I had my Proton emails hacked by the Russians.
Right. How was that unearthed?
It was unearthed thanks to the vigilance of our own security people.
Why does MI6 matter to the people of this country? Why do we pay our taxes to pay for MI6?
Well, the first thing I would point out is it's very good value for money for the taxpayer. It's an essential part of the nation's defences. It's an essential part of our national security. It's an essential part of our overall defence infrastructure. And, it collects intelligence on the major threats to the country and looks at what our enemies and opponents are doing to undermine our national interests. So it fulfills an important role.
On a given week, how many terror attacks upon this country on the mainland might be thwarted?
I don't think I can answer that question accurately. I mean, I retired quite a long time ago, but let's face it, there are probably a number of conspiracies or ongoing concerns which are being unearthed at any one time. And remember, that isn't just MI6, it will be the security service, it will be GCHQ working all together to look at these problems.
What about China? They're clearly no friend of this country, but we have to work with them, don't we?
Well, we have intertwined, interdependent economies. Look at the number of Chinese students in our universities. At the moment, it's unimaginable that we're not going to have some sort of relationship with China, but we need to conduct that relationship with our eyes wide open. A person I know very well who's very experienced and spent a lot of time in China said, look, the Chinese are good at making you think it's win-win, but ultimately it's we win, you lose. And I think we just need to make very sure that the Chinese understand that if we're going to have a relationship with them, it's win-win, it's reciprocal. And we need to keep our eyes wide open continuously.
Which is why you backed the decision by the then Prime Minister Theresa May to cancel the Huawei rollout of 5G.
Well, I was vociferous personally on Huawei, and I think I was one of the first people to speak out, despite the fact it was government policy to allow the Huawei company to do our 5G. But over time, I think the threat has been understood and realised. Huawei, as a Chinese company, has very close links with the Chinese military.
So, Richard, you've spoken about mass unchecked immigration into Western countries like the UK. Net migration into Britain last year was over 600,000. That's before you get to illegal immigration. What are your concerns about this level of migration into the country from a security point of view?
It's destabilising socially. It's destabilising politically. It allows people who have, let's say, criminal backgrounds. It allows potential terrorists into the country. I mean, there are so many knock-ons and concerns from having, large waves of immigration.
But would that include the legal migration to this country, or would you focus exclusively on the small boats crisis? Or is
I think I would focus.
Across
I mean, look, there's an element of migration which is healthy for the economy. We all know that and we all understand that. I think it's the people trafficking, it's the illegal. And I mean, a lot of the people claiming to be refugees, they're economic migrants. And, it's very hard to absorb them in the numbers that they're coming in. They're coming in too fast, too many. And it has a heavy political downside. Look at the effect it has on our politics on a daily basis.
I know that you're concerned, as most people are, most of my viewers and listeners, about preserving and protecting the environment, but you've been slightly sceptical in some aspects of the debate around climate change. So climate hysteria, gender ideology, critical race theory, all features of what's called woke ideology. Are these radical ideas a threat to this country?
I think they're, to someone of my age, they're of deep concern. I mean, zero carbon is certainly an objective that we all embrace. But a practical policy to zero carbon is something that deeply concerns me. And it seems that some of the, as it were, deadlines being put in place by the government are completely impractical.
Well, if we
they're not going to work.
If we bankrupt ourselves for net zero whilst China burn fossil fuels for fun, that is a national security issue, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Because
I mean, you know, and at the moment we export a lot of our carbon to China, or, you know, for manufacturing, and they are encouraging us to invest in renewables, when renewables, quite frankly, are still a relatively small part of our energy system and are not growing at the speed that some people think. They are largely uneconomic. Look what happened in the last auction for, you know, building new wind farms.
No investment.
No investment, no takers, because they're too expensive. We need a practical, pragmatic policy that works. And I think at the moment we're in a zone where we're looking at policies which are based on ideology, not good sense.
Quick one on the Iraq War. Was Alistair Campbell's sexed-up dossier and the failure to unearth those famed weapons of mass destruction damaging to the reputation of British intelligence?
Of course it was, but I wouldn't put all the blame on Alistair's shoulders. It's a really complicated issue. And, you know, the Chilcot Inquiry has written a report that's longer than the Bible trying to get to the bottom of it. And in my view, it still doesn't answer satisfactorily a lot of the questions. So, you know, if you wanted me to debate it, we need to devote an hour's programme to it, I think.
Speaking of an hour's programme's worth of material, how do you solve a problem like Vladimir Putin?
At the moment, by supporting the Ukrainians militarily with armaments to the hilt and not, as it were, weakening in our resolve to see Ukraine regain its lost territory.
Yes, I think you're hopeful of a revolution in Moscow. That would probably be the swiftest solution.
Well, I think Putin's position is probably fragile. We've just seen that with what happened to Prigozhin.
To right. What are your thoughts about the UK and Brexit, global Britain, and the implications for our security?
I'm an optimist. I think that our, as it were, re-established independence in the making of foreign and defence policy, the development of an alliance like AUKUS with Australia and the United States, these are big practical steps which put us... And I mean, let's face it, Brussels is not really very competent at doing geopolitics. So I think to be liberated from Brussels' inability to take unified decisions on big international policy issues is a big plus for Brexit.
Well, speaking of geopolitics, let me tell you that Sir Richard Dearlove is the co-presenter of One Decision. It's a podcast with 150,000 listeners as we speak. One Decision, do check it out. And Sir Richard, thank you so much for your valuable time. Lots more to come. I'll be dealing with Stephen Fry, but first, here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's going to stay warm in the south over the next 24 hours. It's going to stay cool in the north. But through the weekend, there's an increased chance of thundery showers in places as the humidity rises. For the time being, a weather front is stuck across the central swathe of the UK. That's been bringing wet weather all day, really, across central and southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland. That continues into the night time. To the far north, we keep clear spells and a few showers. Temperatures dipping in northern Scotland to 3 to 6 Celsius in places. But it's a warm night across much of England and Wales, mid-teens in places. And as the night goes on, an increased chance of some of these thundery showers turning up across parts of Wales and the southwest. These will tend to fade away during the morning once again, and then a fine day for much of the southern half of the UK An outside chance here and there of the odd thundery shower popping up, but otherwise a lot of fine weather, sunny spells and temperatures reaching 26 or 27 Celsius towards the southeast. It's going to dry up as well across these central parts with the rain easing away. A clear start then on Sunday for Scotland, but a chilly start with the frost in places here. Warmer elsewhere, and through the day on Sunday we're going to see humid air drift north across the UK, and with lowering pressure that will lead to the risk of thundery rain pushing north as well. Monday, further heavy downpours and thunderstorms, and then it turns cooler in the south.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, a very busy hour to come. In my Take at 10 super lovey, Stephen Fry thinks Brexit's been a disaster. He can feel it in his bones. I'll be dealing with the millionaire socialist straight after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on TV, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my Take at 10, super lovey Stephen Fry thinks Brexit's been a disaster. Even though I voted Remain, I'm here to put him right. I'll be dealing with this millionaire socialist in no uncertain terms and explaining to this intellectual just how democracy actually works. It's in a few minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. With their botched Stop the Boats plan, the blocking of 100,000 new homes and handing more power to the striking unions, have Labour handed Rishi Sunak a political lifeline? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, one of the best connected political journalists in the country. Plus, Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my top pundits. So, a packed show, lots to get through. First, the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. The top story tonight. The former nurse Lucy Letby has filed a bid to challenge her conviction at the Court of Appeal. The 33-year-old was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. The most prolific child serial killer in modern British history was sentenced to a whole life order at Manchester Crown Court just last month. Also in the news tonight, unions have vowed to fight the government tooth and nail, they say, after a £500 million government investment in Tata Steel has put 3,000 jobs at risk. The government says, however, it will support more than 12,000 jobs in the sector. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal-fired to electric furnaces to reduce carbon emissions. Labour says only the Tories could spend £500 million to make thousands of workers redundant. Now, the Home Office has confirmed tonight that a biohazard response at Dover Harbour this afternoon followed reports of some migrants arriving feeling unwell. GB News managed to film as the authorities wore specialist biohazard coveralls at the main migrant processing facility. The Home Office says the precautionary measures were taken in response to reports of some small boat migrants feeling unwell. Around 300 migrants arrived today after being picked up on 6 small boats in the English Channel. A French couple has been jailed for almost 10 years after trying to smuggle Vietnamese migrants into the UK hidden inside domestic furniture. Junior Toussaint and Adrien Paul were sentenced to 9 years and 11 months in prison after pleading guilty to assisting unlawful migration into the UK. The pair squeezed Vietnamese migrants inside specially adapted sofas and chests of drawers in an effort to smuggle them through border checks at the port of New Haven. The man killed in the dog attack in Staffordshire yesterday has been named by police as Ian Price. The 52-year-old died in hospital after being seriously injured at Stonnell near Walsall yesterday afternoon. A man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of 2 dangerous dogs believed to be American XL bullies. Well, the Prime Minister said today the breed is to be banned in the UK by the end of the year. Train drivers will strike at the end of this month after their long-running dispute over pay continues. ASLEF says its members at 16 train operators will walk out on the 30th of September and the 4th of October. The union said the strikes will force train operators to cancel all services, causing massive disruption for passengers. Now, today is Battle of Britain Day, marking 83 years since one of the most decisive moments of the Second World War. On this day, in 1940, the Royal Air Force turned the tide against an overwhelming German Luftwaffe. Flypasts and events commemorating the occasion have been taking place across the UK and will continue throughout the weekend. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Back now to Mark Dolan.
Tonight's show is dedicated to the heroes of the Battle of Britain. They fought for our freedom, which we enjoy to this day. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. With their botched Stop the Boats plan, the blocking of 100,000 new homes and handing more power to the striking unions, have Labour handed Rishi Sunak a political lifeline? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, one of the best-connected political journalists in the country. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. This evening, Jasmine Birtles, financial and business journalist, Lord Coolvere Ranger, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson, and a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, podcaster and commentator Lewis Oakley. As well as reacting to the big stories of the day and tomorrow's papers, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros. So lots to get through, a busy hour to come, and those papers are on the way. First, My Take at 10. Comedy legend Stephen Fry made headlines this week, not for a gag or a new sketch, but an all-too-predictable rant against Brexit. Take a listen.
I mean, Stephen, it's been an extraordinary period. You know, COVID, Brexit, all of those things.
Brexit, we must mention Brexit. The Labour Party is afraid to mention it. It was a catastrophe and everybody knows it deep in their bones.
Well, and not everybody would agree with you.
They know it, of course they do.
They know it, of course they do. Now, I voted Remain. You heard me right, but I immediately accepted the result. And I might have hoped that Fry, a famously clever man, educated to within an inch of his life at Cambridge University, would understand the concept of democracy too. I'm sure that he read some Latin, you'd hope so. But it seems that this darling of the media elite isn't happy with the decision made by a majority of the public, the proletariat, the great unwashed, to leave a political bloc. Demonstrating how religious rather than political or economic this irrational hatred of Brexit has become, Fry offers no argument against Brexit, merely saying that everyone, whoever they are, can feel it in their bones that it's been a catastrophe. Hating Brexit has become a cult. Honestly, these die-hard Remainers are utter cults. After all, everything, apparently, is Brexit's fault. Supply chain problems are Brexit's fault, even though the world was in lockdown for 2.5 years. Inflation is Brexit's fault, even though the government printed empty billions to fund the COVID response. The national debt, energy bills, the cost of living crisis, all of this is Brexit's fault, not the fact that we borrowed money we didn't have in a failed attempt to stop a virus. What else might Brexit be responsible for? The stubborn recession in Germany and across the Eurozone, is that Brexit? England's dismal performance against Ukraine in the football, is that Brexit's fault? What about the wildly unfunny all-female reboot of Ghostbusters? Another consequence of our departure from the bloc? Do me a favour. In the eyes of these millionaire lovies with more air miles than the Wright brothers, Britain is apparently a xenophobic, backward-looking hellhole. Fry's old mate, Emma Thompson, described this country as, and I quote, a rainy corner of sort of Europe, a cake-filled, misery-laden, grey old island. None of this, of course, is true. Britain is an economic and creative powerhouse, a joyful, open and tolerant society, and a global beacon of diversity. And we have a complex but proud history. Of course, among the showbiz elite, this is an unfashionable view. And talking down the country and raging about Brexit is their favourite pastime as they guzzle Negronis at the Groucho Club in Soho. Stephen Fry is a truly wonderful talent, and I've always been and remain a massive fan. But with his arrogant, dismissive comments about Brexit, which of course he's entitled to make, what is he actually saying about the 17.6 million people that voted for it? I mean, 17.6 million, that's a lot of xenophobic bigots, isn't it? That's a lot of thick, uneducated people, wouldn't you say? In fact, Brexit was the biggest democratic event in the history of this country. And Stephen Fry is famously very well read, so perhaps he could have a read of some of these actual facts. BNP Paribas, one of the biggest banks in the world, a French bank no less, has advised its clients to move money out of the Eurozone into Britain. How about this, Mr. Fry? Britain has been readmitted into the EU's Horizon project. Such is the value of our scientific expertise. Since we left the EU, Britain has grown 8.7%, Germany 8.1%, and Italy 6.1%. Did Italy have Brexit? We've seen 1 million new jobs in that time, and by July 2022, our exports to the EU were not just the highest since Brexit, but the highest ever. Investment into the UK, up. Exports to the UK, up. Exports to the rest of the world, up, up, up. Have I made my point? We avoid recession, Germany gets one. Inflation is heading south, it goes on. Even that well-reported figure that Britain was the slowest G7 country to recover from the pandemic proved to be a big fat lie, with the ONS correcting what they thought was a downturn of 0.2% to the truth, which is that we had expanded by 1.5%, outpacing, wait for it, Germany, France, Italy, and even Japan. There's the AUKUS nuclear defence deal, with America and Australia, not possible with EU membership. There's the trade deal with the CPTPP, which I thought was a cough mixture, but is the largest trading bloc in the world, bigger than the EU. The Canadian meat industry are currently complaining about that deal because, wait for it, it's too good for Britain. That's right, Brexit winners, furious Canadians claim new trade deal is too positive for the UK. We currently have 38 active trade deals, which we don't have to pay the EU for, with more on the way, including India and a market of 1 billion people. Oh, and we can dispense with the idea that Britain doesn't produce anything anymore. That old chestnut. This week, it was announced the UK manufacturing has jumped to number 8 in the world, leapfrogging France, no pun intended, and closing in on Italy, mamma mia. Rising to number 8 in the world for manufacturing since Brexit. And how about this, Mr. Fry? A new poll by US News and World Report reveals that Americans rate the UK as the best country in the world, all since Brexit. Stephen Fry can feel that it's in his bones that Brexit has been a disaster. Well, I feel in my bones that he's talking out of his backside. This famous comedian got everyone laughing this week, but not for the right reasons. What do you think, Mark, at GBNews.com? Now, I am a big fan of Stephen Fry. I think he's a really hilarious man. I loved Fry and Laurie. I love his books. Jeeves and Wooster. He's got unlimited talents. He's a great, great, great artist, OK? And perhaps you could argue that he's worried about some of the Brexit impacts, right? I've never painted over or glossed over the fact that small businesses are suffering as a result of Brexit. There are now small and medium-sized enterprises that don't export to the EU at all because of red tape. So it ain't perfect, but I would argue the data speaks for itself. It's largely positive. But let's get the view of my top pundits. Jasmine Birtles, who is a financial and business journalist, the founder of moneymagpie.com. Lord Coolvere Ranger, broadcaster and former advisor to Boris Johnson. And a brand new star on Mark Dolan tonight, podcaster and commentator Lewis Oakley. Coolvere Ranger, I'm sorry, but I'm not having Stephen Fry tonight.
Well, I'm disappointed he's not here as well, because I'd love to have seen his response to you, Mark, but I think you'd have had him on not just a technicality, but probably a knockout there. I think the issue also is, you know, we see lots of, dare I say, lovies from the left, usually on a Sunday morning, usually on our national primetime channel, giving some kind of political analysis, normally anti-government. And there's a concern there, because there is a narrative that is continually played out, but the facts are not played out. And the ones that you read out are factual, our trade deals, our freedom to make the decisions that we want to make around not just what we're doing in terms of the economy, but also in terms of how we have dealt with other issues such as national defence, or the AUKUS deal being a prime example. So the freedoms that we were looking for have been grasped. We still have a lot more to do. You've said it's not perfect. There is much more to achieve, but we can't have the naysayers, without any evidence, really saying that it hasn't worked.
Lewis Oakley, I voted Remain because I was worried about short to medium-term Brexit impacts. I do think it's been a problem for some businesses, but look at those numbers. The figures don't lie.
Yeah, I mean, there's stats to argue anything. If you're a small business, you probably had a lot to say about the stats you had. Look, I think Stephen Fry is free to say what he wants. We always talk about free speech. He said what he said. I will say that, you know, 7 years on, the ship has left the port. We're all Brexiteers now. It doesn't matter what you said in 2016. It really doesn't matter. We all have to make this work now. As someone that is young in this country with children, I kind of need this country to work. We've got to make a success of it. And you do still run into people that will be like, oh, well, it's all Brexit's fault, so I'm not even going to bother. We have to. This is the direction now. This is how democracy works. I know it was close. I know that there are a lot of arguments either way. But come on, it's been 7 years now. You can't still be coming back to this. We've got to make it a success.
Jasmine, you are the financial expert. What's your view of what Stephen Fry had to say? He said that most people, I think he said everyone, can feel it in their bones that Brexit's been a catastrophe.
Well, like you, I voted to remain, and I was furious when I saw the result. Now I'm thinking, phew, thank goodness we're out. There are so many problems with the EU. Well, I do genuinely think we are better off out. I do think that the problem that we've had over the last few years, apart from all the lockdowns, etc., is that there have been a significant number of people in power, and not just in government, but in the media and all over, who have been working against Brexit. And when you have a country that is divided against itself, essentially, you've got a bunch of people saying we've got to go in this direction, others are saying we've got to go in that direction. Well, you're not going to get anywhere at all. So, yes, it hasn't worked as well as it should have done. But I think, as Lewis says, if we have more people saying, all right, we're not happy about it, but we will work together. This is where we are. We're going to work together. There are so many opportunities, so very many. And as I say, I'm actually personally glad that we're out. And I do know a lot of people in Europe who'd like to be out too. Italians particularly, they really want out.
Now, to lend a word of defence to my friend Stephen Fry, he does probably speak for millions of people in this country who are still furious about Brexit, who feel that the campaign was misleading and therefore not really a very justified result. Stephen Fry perhaps would argue that many lies were told in the run-up to the referendum. So, you know, we talked about the impact on small businesses of Brexit. It's very sad that young Brits can't just suddenly decide to go and set up shop in Italy or move to France. Of course, that is a cultural price that we've paid. And of course, you've got other tensions around the Brexit project. So do you love it? Do you not love it? Is Stephen Fry right? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at GBnews.com. But you're absolutely right. I've criticised his view, but he's entitled to make it. Coming up, after their botched Stop the Boats plan and the blocking of 100,000 new homes, have Labour left the door open for Rishi Sunak at the next election? Has he been handed a political lifeline by bumbling Keir Starmer? We'll discuss that with a top Fleet Street insider next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the newsmaker, and Rishi Sunak's hopes of building 100,000 more homes were crushed on Tuesday after Labour blocked the proposal in the House of Lords. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was accused of turning from a builder to a blocker after ordering peers to vote against plans to axe water pollution rules to encourage house building. Meanwhile, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has pledged this week to restore more powers to trade unions and give them an ability to strike within 100 days of a Labour government. This on top of a new strategy to stop the boats should they win power, with Starmer seeking a deal to accept a quota of migrants from the EU every year, which some fear is free movement by the back door. So with the announcement of these policies, which will be unpopular in some quarters, have Labour left the door open for Rishi Sunak at the next election? Let's speak to tonight's newsmaker, one of the best connected journalists in the country, the political editor of the Express Online, David Maddox. David, have Labour handed Rishi Sunak a political lifeline?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, well, I think this was always inevitable. At some point, Labour was going to have to come out of hiding and actually explain what they were going to do. And now we're beginning to see the full horror of it. You know, I mean, you've just identified a few of them, but I mean, I think the small boats policy yesterday was a particularly dreadful one. I mean, it's going to start the reversal of Brexit. It's going to hand over power to how many illegal migrants we take to Brussels. It's going to mean that, you know, not that we haven't had enough already, but we're going to get 100,000 at least extra illegal migrants. It's going to create a kind of open doors policy. So, you know, we're actually finally beginning to see some of the truth behind what Labour really is.
I really enjoyed reading your piece in today's Express Online about how Starmer is off to a woke conference with Canadian Premier Justin Trudeau. Tell me more.
Well, he's off to the kind of, it was called the Centrist Dad Conference, but actually Jacinda Ardern, remember her from New Zealand, she's going to be there as well. So the centrist dad and mum as well, I think. But it's a collection really of the world's worst politicians, as far as I can see. Of course, Ardern and Trudeau were both trained up by the World Economic Forum. They were both on that youth programme that it runs, the Davos people, as was the Irish Taoiseach as well. And and we had a couple of weeks ago, I think, or was it last week, Keir Starmer was asked Davos or Westminster, who should be making the decisions, and he said Davos. Davos, of course, is the woke billionaires, the unaccountable, the people who hate things like Brexit, who complain about populism and all the rest of it, who don't want any scrutiny. And this is the sort of vision that Starmer has for this country.
Speaking of vision, let's talk about his deputy, Angela Rayner, who addressed the TUC conference this week, David, saying that she'd scrap 0 hours contracts, boost the minimum wage and give the unions more power to go on strike. Perhaps laudable aims in some cases, but politically contentious.
Well, I think most of us think that the unions seem to be able to go on strike whenever they want. And, they've already caused chaos in the NHS and probably cost some people their lives, certainly by wrecking the attempts to bring down the waiting lists. I mean, let's not beat about the bush on that. I mean, they've literally played with people's lives. The unions have on that. They've been bringing the transport network to a halt for ages. My son is about to start university, and the university lecturers are still on strike, it turns out, and they have been for well over a year. Teachers keep on going on strike. So I don't really see how much easier it needs to be for them, actually. And speaking, actually, as somebody who used to work on a 0 hours contract a few years back, it's not such a bad thing. And actually, I rather enjoyed the flexibility it gave me when I was starting out in work. And, Angela Rayner just is fairly typical of, actually unusually in Labour these days, but that old Labour kind of myopic look on what work should be. And, it's the truth again. It's the truth again of what's happening with Labour.
Yes, I don't think you should make it harder for businesses to employ people, I've got to say. Listen, I wish your lad very, very great success at university. If he's 1% as smart as his dad, he'll get a first. My thanks to David Maddox, who is the political editor of the Express Online. Express.co.uk is their website. Front page is on the way. First, the weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's going to stay warm in the south over the next 24 hours. It's going to stay cool in the north. But through the weekend, there's an increased chance of thundery showers in places as the humidity rises. For the time being, a weather front is stuck across a central swathe of the UK. That's been bringing wet weather all day, really, across central and southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland. That continues into the night time. To the far north, we keep clear spells and a few showers. Temperatures dipping in northern Scotland to 3 to 6 Celsius in places. But it's a warm night across much of England and Wales, mid-teens in places. And as the night goes on, an increased chance of some of these thundery showers turning up across parts of Wales and the southwest. These will tend to fade away during the morning once again, and then a fine day for much of the southern half of the UK. An outside chance here and there of the odd thundery shower popping up, but otherwise a lot of fine weather, sunny spells and temperatures reaching 26 or 27 Celsius towards the southeast. It's going to dry up as well across these central parts with the rain easing away. A clear start then on Sunday for Scotland, but a chilly start with the frost in places here. Warmer elsewhere, and through the day on Sunday we're going to see humid air drift north across the UK, and with lowering pressure that will lead to the risk of thundery rain pushing north as well. Monday, further heavy downpours and thunderstorms, and then it turns cooler in the south.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
OK, folks, the papers are in. We will debate them next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's exactly 10:30. Do you want to do one of those stingy things, Sebastian? We pay good money for those things. We better use them. The Daily Express hero dad killed by devil dogs was protecting his mother. A hero father was savaged to death by 2 American XL bully dogs as he protected his elderly mum. Ian Price was attacked by the animals after they jumped out of a neighbour's window just yards from a primary school where his wife was at work. Brave locals tried to drive the pair away during the 20-minute onslaught. But Mr. Price, God bless him, God rest his soul, who was 52, could not be saved. We'll discuss that with my pundits very shortly. Murdoch team told Sunak not to quit over Partygate. Rishi Sunak drafted a resignation statement on the day he was fined by police for breaching lockdown rules, but he was persuaded to stay on after an intervention by executives working for Rupert Murdoch. Also, insomnia drug gets NHS green light, and there's no next day grogginess. That's right, the first nightly pill for chronic insomnia has been greenlit by our health service. The medication taken half an hour before bedtime has been found to help sufferers get to sleep more quickly and stay asleep longer without feeling groggy the next day. 1 in 3 people suffer from insomnia at some stage in their lives, and about 7% suffer from chronic sleep problems. OK, let's look at the Times now. PM rejects reprieve for petrol cars. Tough sales target will stay to hit 2030 deadline. Rishi Sunak is ready to phase out petrol and diesel cars and stick to his deadline of 2030. Don't forget, other EU countries have delayed it to 2035. Daily Mail. Labour's 20-mile-an-hour limit is beyond insane. Labour in Wales will step up its war on drivers, say the Mail, by making 20 mile an hour the maximum on most 30 roads. First Minister Mark Drakeford today defended the move, insisting it would save lives and NHS resources. Royals snub Harry's birthday for the first time is the other story. The Eye Weekend, XL bully banned in 2025 after amnesty. Rishi Sunak announced a ban on dangerous American XL bully dogs after 10 people are mauled to death in 2 years. No mass cull as owners seek to get grace period before breed is taken off the streets within 18 months. Also, COVID jabs may soon be offered to over 50s to protect the NHS. I love that language. It's nice to have it back, isn't it? Protect the NHS. Here we go again. The Daily Mail. Mirror campaign victory, killer dogs to be banned. Strictly's back as well. Daily Star. Say bye to the summer and a big hello to autumn. That's all, folks. If you're lucky enough to have a bit of sunshine today, then the best that you can do is enjoy it while you can, because next week it's going to feel a lot like autumn. And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from my wonderful pundits tonight. Delighted to have Jasmine Birtles, Lord Coulvier Ranger, and Lewis Oakley. Folks, where shall we start? Let's have a look at all of the different stories. Can we talk about these dangerous dogs, Coulvier? Hero dad killed by devil dogs was protecting his mother. There are too many of these stories. The Prime Minister is right to act.
Yes, he is. Look, we're a nation of dog lovers. I'm a dog lover, but I don't have one of my own. Family members have had dogs before.
Did you grow up with a dog?
No, but my sister had a dog for a number of years in her family, and, you know, lovely Labrador.
Lovely.
We love dogs. And the issue we have is the irresponsible ownership and the irresponsible breeding that has been going on here that have absolutely brought this issue forward. We've seen the numbers rise in dog attacks as well. I think we're at 22,000 this year. It's been steadily going up. I'm with the NSPCA, Battersea Dogs Home, all of them who are saying, look, yes, something to do about the dogs, but we must look at the ownership. We must look at who's being allowed to have these dogs and how they're treating those dogs. And these dogs then become an issue for the community, as we're seeing. So if it takes for well-minded community citizens to say, there's a dog here that's not being treated well, that is becoming a danger, then we need to call it out.
Lewis, you've got kids. I mean, we're all worried. You don't have to be a parent to worry about this, but, I mean, a small child has no chance with one of these animals. This is necessary, isn't it?
I think so, and I am someone that worries a little bit about the government coming into nanny state and ban things, but I just don't think you can take a chance with these dogs. I think they have to go. And it's not just about, and I totally take your point about owners, but with some of them, it could just be that they overheat and just go berserk. So even with good owners, I just think the size of them, what they can do, their jaws can lock, and I just think of the size of my little kids. We just don't need to be taking that chance. I know that some people might say, well, it's not been that many, but we don't need it to be any higher than it already has been.
Jasmine, yeah, absolutely, Lewis. Jasmine, do you think a cull is a little, beyond the pale there?
I think a cull is, in all honesty. I mean, I'm very much, I'm angry that they're called devil dogs. They're not devil dogs. It is the owners, absolutely. And you remember we had this a few years ago with Rottweilers. We've had pit bulls, absolutely. I love pit bulls. I've got friends who've got Rottweilers. They're fabulous, fabulous dogs. It's the way they're looked after, or the way they're treated, how they're trained to behave. We also very much still have dog fights going on, behind the scenes. That these sort of things exist, and I agree that we do need to have us as just people in the society noticing what's happening and telling the authorities if we see bad things happening with dogs.
What's happening on the streets, though, of our great cities, Coulvier, is the weaponisation of these animals. They're being bred and groomed by gangsters, and it's the equivalent now of a knife or a gun.
Yes, they are being used as weapons, and I think, again, and status in these gangs culture to have these kinds of beastly dogs, and then that, again, comes from how they're treated. They're encouraged to be more aggressive and then become violent. So, but we should be able to witness this. In many of these cases, when something terrible happens, neighbours and local people are saying, oh, we did notice this with this dog, we did see something happening, or somebody else was attacked and got away. So I think call it out. You know, let's not be afraid to call the owners out when we see these dogs being handled in that way.
The war on motorists continues apace, Lewis. The Daily Mail, Labour's 20-mile-an-hour limit is beyond insane. This will be 20 now in all residential areas across Wales. 20 is too slow, isn't it?
It is. As someone that's learning to drive at the moment, I'm kind of wondering what's the point, because get there quicker cycling at this rate.
Well, maybe that's the plan.
I mean, that probably is the plan. It seems ridiculous. I don't know who this is helping, and you kind of see all these other studies like, but this actually is worse for the environment. So I don't know, but I mean, we'll just see if he gets re-elected.
Primary schools, no problem. Hospitals, perhaps, 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But every residential road...
It's ridiculous. Xi Jinping, Drakeford, I don't know what, what his aim in life is, but it does seem to me that he will do everything to lock people down, stop them going anywhere. He doesn't want them to drive further than 15 minutes for 20 miles an hour. I mean, really, as you say, I think that we're being pushed towards cycling and walking.
Although, are we guilty of double standards here? We're worried about dangerous dogs, and yet we're not worried about fast cars. cars?
Well, no, here, I think, this is Welsh Labour knows best. Right, because it's blanket policies. This is the problem when you have blanket policies. Yes, outside schools, there may be a need for lower speed limits. But when you apply it across, and I've done transport policy, I've looked at you have to look at the nuances. You have to look at where actually there will be, dual carriages or other parts of the road network where for a higher a speed limit is perfectly safe, perfectly acceptable. So it's this blanket approach, this control people, this not have the nuance that people, the application of common sense leaves the building when you get blanket policies like this.
Why is it always like just average working people? I think if they really want to save the planet, let's ban private jets. Do that first, and then do this.
But coming back to Mark's point, this is also being justified as protecting the NHS by Comrade Drayford.
Well, indeed so. Speaking of the NHS, Corvier, insomnia drug gets the NHS green light and there's no next-day grogginess. Hallelujah.
Well, insomnia is a huge problem for a lot of people, I know that. But I think if this works, they'll solve, a good night's sleep is great for everyone. I just am always concerned when there's more drugs here that are the answer. Because normally, shall I say, and I don't suffer from insomnia because I've got 2 young children and a very busy life. I'm conked out at the end of the day. But there are normally some other issues.
Plus the demands of Lady Ranger as well. And we won't dwell on that. Family show, come on, we've all had a drink.
A nice cup of tea. But there are other things, other mental health issues, other challenges that sometimes it's not the drugs only that are going to solve those problems.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. They say, oh, there's no grogginess. But what other side effects are there? We won't know for quite a while. And as Corvier says, with something like insomnia, there are many other factors. So those things need to be dealt with. It's not just, oh, here's a pill.
Indeed. The PM rejects a reprieve for petrol cars, sticking to that 2030 deadline. That's not going to be popular, is it? Particularly when the Germans, for example, have pushed it back to 2035.
Yeah, the Germans, who are pretty much run by the Green Party. It just seems like it's almost sort of a religious thing now with the climate. They're not thinking, they're not looking at the figures, they're not listening to the people. They need to listen to the people. If they listen to the people in the UK, they'd be saying, move it back to 2050, actually. So are they really... this is a very stupid idea, I think, and they need to just climb down off this sort of religious fervour that they have and have a look at the actual figures and go, yeah, OK, we will have to move it to at least 2035.
OK, well, good stuff. Look, lots more to come. More of tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from my top pundits. Plus, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. I got an email saying, can you give the pundits more time for their heroes and zeros? So I always listen to you. I promise you I do. I love the feedback. Keep it coming, Mark at gbnews.com. Plus, we've been asking, does Labour's migrant plan prove that they want to take us back into the EU? The results are in, and I will reveal all next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Earlier, we asked you, does Labour's migrant plan prove that they want to take us back into the EU? Well, the results are in. And it's overwhelming. It's damning, I've got to say, for Labour. 87% say yes, whilst 12% say no. And let me tell you, we have plenty of evidence that many GB News viewers and listeners are Labour voters, so that ought to be a concern for Keir Starmer. The Guardian, speaking of Labour voters, it's in, hot off the press, mass campaign needed to curb unhealthy living. Labels on alcohol and hard-hitting TV campaigns about the dangers of unhealthy eating are needed to curb the huge rise in avoidable cancers, charities and health campaigners have warned. The World Cancer Research Fund said mass media campaigns using tough messages mirroring the graphic photographs and wording on cigarette packets should be used to tackle awareness about unhealthy food and alcohol. And also dangerous. American XL bully dogs will be banned, says Rishi Sunak. Right, those are your front pages. The emails are coming in thick and fast. And what about those 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in Wales? That's going to be an idea rolled out by Mark Drakeford, the First Minister. Peter says, I've had a taxi every day last week and every day this week for work purposes. So why at 2 a.m. in London am I having to sit back and watch it take 30 minutes to get out of London because of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits? Linda says, Mark, a family were mown down in Ramsgate Town last year. A mother with children and pregnant, and her elderly father mown down by a man on drugs and out of control driving. He drove onto the pavement and hit them all. There was a plan to have 20-mile-an-hour limits in this town, but nothing happened. Why is that? What a tragic story. Colin says the slower a car travels, the longer its engine is running. James says, Mark, 20 mile an hour indicates the stupidity and moronity of communism. And last but not least, the Prime Minister to ban the XL bully dog. How about this from another Peter? 2025, all dogs from 2025, except military, police, etc., should have to wear a muzzle. Keep those emails coming, mark@gbnews.com. Still with me looking at the big stories of the day. We have Jasmine Birtles, Lord Coulvier Ranger, and Lewis Oakley. Now, they say that money can't buy you happiness, but according to a new study, it can. Researchers have revealed the amount of money you need to earn in each country to be happy. The UK came 18th on the list, with an individual needing £68,404 a year. So how much money do you need to be happy? Jasmine, you are the founder of moneymagpie.com, an excellent consumer website.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a scary figure, isn't it? 68,000. I mean, the average wage at the moment is in the 30s.
Yeah.
So that means that, you know, very few people, frankly, are going to be earning 68 or more.
Yeah.
And to be happy. And of course, it depends on your lifestyle. It depends if you've paid off your mortgage. It depends if you live in London or, you know, Hull, or it depends if you're married or single, or got family. So there are lots of different possibilities there. I was thinking to myself, well, I think I could probably be happy on sort of 40 plus. I think I could manage. But then I was thinking about the figures they came up with. I was thinking maybe a bit more. But this does have ramifications for our pensions, for our retirement funds. And I know a lot of people who are saying, I haven't got any investments, I'm just going to survive on the state pension. That's about 10 grand a year. So...
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I don't think money necessarily makes you happy, but the absence of debt is something that I think is the ultimate goal.
Yes.
And when you look at those credit card statements coming in and those mortgage statements, it puts years on you, let me tell you.
It does. It's a pretty unhappy thing.
As many of my viewers and listeners will of course, attest to. Let's get to your headline heroes and back page zeros. So who's your hero of the day, Jasmine?
Djokovic. Absolutely, Mr. Djokovic. I am so impressed by him, not just because he's a fantastic tennis player, but because he stood for what he believed in, his principles, and he has stuck it to the man by winning and winning and winning. All those countries, all those governments that said, we're not having you in because you're not vaccinated. And he just continued to do it and has kept winning, and I'm very impressed by him.
And he's won the argument.
Yes.
How about you, Kulveer, your headline hero?
Well, you mentioned him earlier, and I bought his book while we were on air. Graham Linehan, you know, the book's called Tough Crowd. He's had a tough situation. He's toughed it out. He's getting support. You know, and again, it's not just about him. It is about saying, look, we're all there. We understand the issues that people have, but you should be able to say what you want to say and not be cancelled.
Absolutely. Of course, Graham Linehan, who's been attacked for his gender-critical views, pointing out that there are just two biological sexes, which back in the day was not controversial, but now it is. Lewis, your headline hero.
Mine is Damien Groves. So I don't know if you caught this story. This is the guy who had his bike stolen and the police said, not enough evidence, nothing we can do. I mean, I think he spent $6 grand, bought himself some drones, a private investigator, went to Poland and he got his bikes back. So there we go. It can be done, police.
Yeah, definitely. To steal someone's mode of transport is a really egregious crime, in my opinion. As a veteran of stolen motorbikes, let me tell you. Listen, how about your back page zero today?
It has to be Andrew Bailey, our horrendous governor of the Bank of England. And frankly, not just him, just the Bank of England. I mean, everything they do, everything they've done over the last couple of years at least has been wrong. You can now tell what's going to happen by just thinking the opposite of what they're saying, particularly of what Andrew Bailey says. I mean, just last week, the chief economist said that they probably wouldn't be putting interest rates up. So I'm thinking, OK, so interest rates will be going up, will they? You know, everything. Andrew Bailey, about 18 months ago, said that printing money doesn't create inflation.
Correct.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And look at all the printing, you know, the inflation that we've had. Yeah, hopeless.
We're all paying the price.
Yeah, we are.
For their incompetence. And I had top economists in the course of the pandemic on my old radio show, people with letters after their name, professors, saying that the borrowing was cost neutral. I beg to differ.
Yeah, me too.
How about you, Kulveer, your back page zero of the day?
Well, he may have a huge lead in the polls, but Sir Keir Starmer's manoeuvres yesterday with Europe, I think going cap in hand and saying, you know, I'm going to do a deal, I want to get an agreement. And then today, you've had European diplomats basically saying, he's deluded. Their words, not mine, because it's taken them 7 years and they can't get to an agreement on how they're handling the European migrant crisis. And they're saying if Sir Keir Starmer thinks that they're going to deal with the UK, they are, in their words, deluded. So
aren't we being harsh on Keir Starmer? Don't we need to engage with Europe to solve this?
I think if I was one of those terrible, almost terrorists like which Sir Keir Starmer's language saying they're equivalent to gangsters, who is who is capitalising on human trafficking, would I be fearful of Sir Keir Starmer saying I'm going to go into discussions with the EU, or what's happening right now, toughening the border control, working better with the French, getting policies in place that get people to say they're not going to come here, like Rwanda? Those are the things that are going to stop the marketplace for those gangsters.
Lewis, your zero of the day.
Mine is actually a company, so it's Win My Home. Don't know if anyone saw this. Dominated my Instagram feed with winning a mansion, £2 million mansion. The winner got picked, and they said, "Oh, actually, we don't have the mansion. Here's £5,000."
What?
Imagine.
Absolute scandal. Rip off Britain. I love this email from Robin. 20 mile an hour in Wales as a speed limit. Can sheep run that fast? Robin, brilliant stuff. On tomorrow's show, my Mark Meets guest is the author of Born Gangster. He's a gangster himself. He's gone straight. Jimmy Tippett plus Kinsey Schofield and Christopher Biggins. Headliners is next. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It's going to stay warm in the south over the next 24 hours. It's going to stay cool in the north. But through the weekend, there's an increased chance of thundery showers in places as the humidity rises. For the time being, a weather front is stuck across a central swathe of the UK. That's been bringing wet weather all day, really across central and southern Scotland, northern England, Northern Ireland. That continues into the night time. To the far north, we keep clear spells and a few showers. Temperatures dipping in northern Scotland to 3 to 6 Celsius in places. But it's a warm night across much of England and Wales, mid-teens in places. And as the night goes on, an increased chance of some of these thundery showers turning up across parts of Wales and the southwest. These will tend to fade away during the morning once again, and then a fine day for much of the southern half of the UK. An outside chance here and there of the odd thundery shower popping up, but otherwise a lot of fine weather, sunny spells and temperatures reaching 26 or 27 Celsius towards the southeast. It's going to dry up as well across these central parts with the rain easing away. A clear start then on Sunday for Scotland, but a chilly start with the frost in places here. Warmer elsewhere, and through the day on Sunday we're going to see humid air drift north across the UK, and with lowering pressure that will lead to the risk of thundery rain pushing north as well. Monday, further heavy downpours and thunderstorms, and then it turns cooler in the south.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV,